The moment Justin Gatlin walked into that tiny coffee shop on East 42nd Street, he had no idea his entire world was about to change forever. The bell above the door chimed softly as Justin stepped inside Sunrise Cafe, shaking raindrops from his expensive charcoal suit. He'd passed this place 1,000 times on his way to board meetings, never giving it a second glance. Today, something pulled him inside. Perhaps the warm golden light spilling onto the wet sidewalk, or maybe fate itself had finally decided to intervene in his perfectly planned but emotionally empty life. Behind the counter stood a woman who made Justin forget every word in the English language. Davina Perrin moved with graceful efficiency, her dark hair catching the morning light as she prepared drinks with artistic precision. When she looked up and smiled at him, Justin felt something he'd never experienced in his 32 years of calculated living. His heart actually skipped a beat. "Good morning. What can I get started for you?" Her voice was like warm honey, genuine and sweet, without any of the practiced charm he was used to from women who knew his net worth. Justin found himself staring like a teenager. Coffee, just coffee, please." Davina's laugh was musical. "We have 17 different types of coffee. Any particular preference, or should I surprise you?" "Surprise me," Justin heard himself say, though he'd ordered the same black espresso for 15 years. As Davina crafted his drink, Justin couldn't help but watch her hands move with such care over something as simple as coffee. She hummed softly while she worked, completely unconscious of how she was making him feel like he was seeing color for the first time. "Here you go. My signature vanilla cinnamon latte with a touch of caramel. I call it morning magic." She handed him the cup with another radiant smile. Justin took a sip and nearly groaned with pleasure. It was perfect, complex, warm, comforting. "This is incredible. How did you know?" "Lucky guess. You look like someone who needs a little magic in your morning." There was no flirtation in her voice, just genuine kindness. Justin lingered far longer than he should have, making small talk about the weather, the neighborhood, anything to keep hearing her voice. When he finally forced himself to leave, he was already planning his return. The next morning, Justin was back. And the next. And the next. "You know, we do offer a frequent customer discount," Davina teased on his 5th consecutive visit. "I'm not here for the discount," Justin replied honestly, earning him a blush that made his chest tighten with unexpected tenderness. By the second week, their conversations had evolved beyond coffee preferences. Justin learned that Davina was studying to become a teacher, that she sent money home to help her younger brother with college, and that she believed in the goodness of people despite having every reason not to. Davina discovered that beneath Justin's expensive suits was a man who'd never learned how to be truly happy, who worked 16-hour days because he didn't know what else to do with his time. "Why do you work so much?" Davina asked one rainy Thursday morning as she prepared his usual morning magic. Justin paused, considering his automatic response about success and responsibility. Instead, he found himself telling the truth. "Because when I stop working, I realize how empty my life actually is." Davina's expression softened with compassion, not pity. "That sounds lonely." "It is," Justin admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "Well," Davina said, sliding his coffee across the counter with a gentle smile, "you're not alone right now." Those 6 words changed everything. 3 weeks into their daily encounters, Justin finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been burning in his chest. "Davina, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Somewhere that isn't separated by a coffee counter?" Her smile could have powered the entire city. "I thought you'd never ask." Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, not because Justin couldn't afford the finest establishments in the city, but because Davina had mentioned loving authentic pasta. Justin watched in fascination as Davina savored every bite, closed her eyes to appreciate the flavors, and thanked their waiter with genuine warmth. "Most people I know eat like it's a business transaction," Justin observed. "Food is love," Davina replied simply. "Someone put care into making this. The least I can do is appreciate it." Justin had never thought about food or anything else that way before. As they walked through the lamplit streets afterward, sharing stories and laughing like old friends, Justin felt something he'd never experienced: contentment. Not the brief satisfaction of closing a deal or the temporary pleasure of expensive purchases, but a deep, soul-level peace that came from being with someone who saw him as more than his bank account. When they reached Davina's modest apartment building, she turned to face him. The streetlight cast a golden glow around her, making her look almost ethereal. "Thank you for tonight," she said softly. "I had a wonderful time." Justin stepped closer, his heart hammering. "Davina, I need you to know something. I've never met anyone like you. You make me want to be a better man." "You already are a good man, Justin. You just need to let yourself believe it." When she rose on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek, Justin felt his entire world shift on its axis. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened with every shared moment. Justin found himself rushing through business meetings to get to the cafe before Davina's shift ended. He started taking actual lunch breaks, something his assistant had been suggesting for years, just to spend time with her. Davina introduced him to simple pleasures he'd forgotten existed. They fed ducks in Central Park, browsed bookstores for hours, and had picnics on her apartment building's rooftop. She taught him to appreciate sunsets, to listen to street musicians, and to find joy in conversations that had nothing to do with profit margins. "You're changing me," Justin told her one evening as they watched the sunset from the Brooklyn Bridge. "I'm not changing you," Davina replied, taking his hand. "I'm just helping you remember who you really are underneath all those business suits." 2 months into their whirlwind September to November courtship, Justin knew with absolute certainty that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with this extraordinary woman. Not because she was impressed by his wealth, she wasn't, but because she loved the man he was when he forgot about everything else. On a crisp November evening, as autumn leaves danced around them in Central Park, Justin dropped to one knee beside the lake where they'd shared their first kiss. He pulled out a simple but elegant ring, not the largest diamond money could buy, but one chosen specifically for its beauty and meaning. "Davina Perrin," he began, his voice shaking with emotion, "you've shown me what love really means. You've taught me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. You've made me believe in forever. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving how much I love you?" Tears streamed down Davina's face as she nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." As Justin slipped the ring onto her finger, both of them crying and laughing simultaneously, neither could have imagined the trials that awaited them. In that moment, surrounded by fall colors and filled with pure love, their future seemed as bright and endless as the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in mid-December, a small, intimate ceremony in the same park where they'd gotten engaged. Davina wore a simple white dress that made her look like an angel, and Justin couldn't stop smiling as he promised to love, honor, and cherish her for all the days of his life. "I love you, Mrs. Gatlin," he whispered as they swayed to their first dance as husband and wife. "I love you too, Mr. Gatlin, forever and always." As their friends cheered and flower petals fell around them like snow, Justin and Davina were blissfully unaware that watching from across the street, through the lens of a telephoto camera, Florence Gatlin's private investigator was already documenting their happiness that Justin's family would soon do everything in their power to destroy. What dark plans were already being set in motion while the newlyweds celebrated their love? Chapter 2. Honeymoon Bliss. When Justin carried Davina across the threshold of his Manhattan penthouse, she gasped not at the luxury surrounding her, but at the way he looked at her like she was the most precious treasure in the world. The elevator had whisked them 60 floors above the city, but Davina felt like she was floating even higher. Justin's penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park, and the interior was decorated with understated elegance that spoke of old money and refined taste. Yet none of that mattered to Davina as much as the nervous excitement in her new husband's eyes. "Welcome home, Mrs. Gatlin," Justin whispered, still holding her in his arms, reluctant to put her down. "It's beautiful," Davina breathed, looking around the spacious living room with its cream-colored furniture and original artwork. "But it feels so formal." Justin set her down gently, his hands lingering on her waist. "Then let's make it ours. Let's fill it with love and laughter and everything that makes a house a home." That first night, they ordered Chinese takeout and ate it on the marble kitchen island, feeding each other with chopsticks and laughing at their clumsy attempts. Justin had a full staff who could have prepared a 5-course meal, but Davina wanted their first dinner as newlyweds to be simple and intimate. "I've never eaten takeout in this kitchen," Justin admitted, watching Davina arrange the containers with careful attention. "Never?" Davina looked shocked. "What did you eat?" "Whatever the chef prepared. I usually worked through dinner anyway." Justin picked up a piece of sweet and sour chicken with his chopsticks, attempting to copy Davina's graceful technique. "Well, those days are over, Mr. Gatlin. From now on, we make time for each other." She leaned across the counter and kissed him softly, tasting the sweetness of the sauce on his lips. The next morning, Justin woke before dawn, his usual habit, but instead of immediately reaching for his phone to check market reports, he simply watched Davina sleep. Her hair was spread across the silk pillowcase like dark water, and her breathing was slow and peaceful. In the early morning light, filtering through the massive windows, she looked like a goddess who had blessed his previously sterile bedroom with warmth and life. When Davina stirred, finding Justin gazing at her with wonder, she smiled sleepily. "Good morning, husband." "Good morning, beautiful wife." Justin traced her cheek with his fingertip. "I could watch you sleep forever." "That would be rather boring," Davina laughed, stretching like a cat. "Besides, I have plans for us today." "Plans?" Justin raised an eyebrow. His schedule was typically planned months in advance. First, you're going to teach me how to make proper coffee in that intimidating machine in your kitchen. Then, we're going to cook breakfast together. After that..." She rolled on top of him, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "We're going to christen every room in this penthouse." Justin's business-focused mind completely shut down as Davina kissed him with passionate intensity. "I love your plans, Mrs. Gatlin," he murmured against her lips. They spent the morning in the kitchen, Justin patiently showing Davina how to operate his professional-grade espresso machine while she attempted to flip pancakes without disaster. Flour ended up in her hair, syrup somehow got on the ceiling, and they both dissolved into helpless laughter when the smoke alarm went off from their slightly burned bacon. "I think we need practice," Davina giggled, surveying their chaotic but delicious breakfast. "We have the rest of our lives to practice," Justin replied, pulling her close and not caring that she was covered in flour. That afternoon, they explored the penthouse like children in a playground. Justin gave Davina a complete tour, sharing stories about pieces of art he'd collected but never really looked at, showing her rooms he rarely entered. When they reached his home office, a massive space with mahogany furniture and leather-bound books, Davina ran her fingers along his desk. "This is where you spend most of your time," she observed. "Used to spend," Justin corrected, turning her to face him. "My priorities have changed dramatically." In the library, Davina discovered Justin's collection of first-edition novels, many still in pristine condition. "You've never read these, have you?" she asked, pulling out a copy of Pride and Prejudice. "I bought them as investments," Justin admitted sheepishly. "Oh, we're definitely changing that." Davina settled into the leather reading chair, patting her lap. "Come here, husband. Let me read to you." Justin, who hadn't been read to since childhood, found himself lying with his head in Davina's lap as her melodious voice brought Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy to life. Her fingers played through his hair as she read, and Justin felt a peace he'd never known was possible. The days blended into a honeymoon paradise. They danced to jazz music in the living room at midnight, with the city lights twinkling below them like earthbound stars. Justin taught Davina to drive his Lamborghini in the private garage, laughing as she gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles. "I'm going to crash your $1 million car," Davina protested. "It's just metal and engine," Justin replied, his hand covering hers on the gear shift. "You're irreplaceable." They cooked together every evening, transforming Justin's sterile kitchen into a warm heart of their home. Davina taught him to appreciate flavors beyond expensive wine and imported caviar. She showed him how to make simple pasta from scratch, how to choose the ripest tomatoes at the farmer's market, and how sharing a meal could be an act of love. One evening, 3 weeks into their marriage, they were making dinner when Justin's phone rang with its urgent business tone. He automatically reached for it, but Davina caught his hand. "Let it ring," she said softly. "Whatever it is can wait. This moment is ours." Justin looked at his phone, then at his beautiful wife, and made a choice that would have shocked his former self. He turned the phone off completely. "I've never done that before," he admitted. "Done what?" "Ignored a business call. Put something else first." Davina's eyes filled with love and pride. "How does it feel?" Justin pulled her into his arms, feeling her warmth against his chest. "Like freedom." Their physical connection was as profound as their emotional one. Every touch was electric, every kiss a promise. In the master bedroom, with its stunning view of the park, they made love with a passion that left them both breathless and amazed. Justin had been with other women, but never had he felt such complete unity with another person. With Davina, making love wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, emotional, a melding of souls that left them both transformed. "I never knew it could be like this," Justin confessed one morning, as they lay entwined in the silk sheets, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Like what?" Davina asked, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingertip. "So perfect. So real. I feel like I've been sleepwalking my whole life until I met you." Davina propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him with eyes full of love. "You weren't sleepwalking, Justin. You were just waiting for the right person to wake up with." On weekends, they explored the city together like tourists in their own hometown. Justin, who usually traveled by private car or helicopter, found himself walking hand in hand with Davina through street markets, riding the subway, and discovering neighborhoods he'd never bothered to visit. Davina's wonder at simple things, street art, sidewalk musicians, the way light fell through building scaffolding, opened Justin's eyes to beauty he'd been blind to for years. "Look at that," Davina pointed to an elderly couple sharing a pretzel on a park bench, the man carefully wiping mustard from his wife's chin. "What about them?" Justin asked. 50 years, maybe 60 together, and he still takes care of her like she's precious. That's what I want us to be like when we're old." Justin squeezed her hand tighter. "Promise me something, Davina." "Anything." "Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter what challenges we face, you'll remember this feeling. Remember how much we love each other right now." Davina turned to face him fully, her expression serious and tender. "I promise, Justin. No matter what storm comes, I'll remember this sunshine." They sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted like forever. In the evenings, they would curl up on the huge sectional sofa, Davina's head on Justin's shoulder, as they watched old movies or talked about their dreams. Justin shared stories about his childhood, the loneliness of boarding schools, the pressure to succeed, the way his family measured love in terms of achievement rather than affection. "They sound complicated," Davina said diplomatically after hearing about his mother's latest business merger. "They are. But you don't need to worry about them. We'll make our own family traditions." Davina smiled and snuggled closer. "I can't wait to meet them, though. They raised the man I love, so they can't be all bad." Justin's chest tightened with an emotion he couldn't name. Part love for Davina's optimism, part dread about his family's likely reaction to her. But looking down at his wife's trusting face, he pushed those worries aside. Their love was strong enough to handle anything. As their first month of marriage came to a close, Justin found himself changed in ways he couldn't have imagined. He smiled more, worked less, and felt a lightness in his chest that had been absent his entire adult life. Davina had filled his penthouse with plants, photographs of their adventures, and the constant sound of her humming. The space that had once felt like an expensive hotel room now felt like home. "I have something to tell you," Justin said one evening as they prepared dinner together. Davina looked up from chopping vegetables, noting the serious tone in his voice. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about taking you to meet my family. It's time they met the woman who changed my life." Davina's face lit up with excitement. "Really?" "When?" Justin pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Soon. I want them to see how happy you make me. I want them to love you as much as I do." As they kissed in the golden light of the kitchen, neither of them could have predicted that this decision would soon test their love in ways they never imagined possible. Little did they know, Florence Gatlin had already been planning for this moment, and her welcome would be anything but warm. Chapter 3. Paradise in New York Castle. The morning after their first month of marriage in January, Justin woke up with a burning desire to give Davina 3 more months of pure paradise before exposing her to the wolves who shared his bloodline. "Change of plans," Justin announced over breakfast, watching Davina's face light up with curiosity as she bit into the strawberry pancakes they'd made together. "What kind of change?" she asked, syrup glistening on her lips in a way that made Justin's heart race even after weeks of marriage. "We're not going to my family estate yet. First, I want to take you somewhere that's been waiting for us." Justin's eyes sparkled with mysterious excitement. "Pack your bags, Mrs. Gatlin. We're going to my castle." "Your castle?" Davina laughed, thinking he was being playful. "My castle," Justin confirmed with a grin that made him look like a boy planning an adventure. 2 hours later, they were flying in Justin's private helicopter over the Hudson River Valley. Davina pressed against the window in wonder as the landscape unfolded below them like a fairy tale. When the pilot announced their approach to the Gatlin estate in the Catskill Mountains, Davina gasped audibly. Rising from a vast green meadow surrounded by ancient oak trees stood an actual castle, not a mansion styled to look like one, but a genuine medieval fortress that had been transported stone by stone from Scotland in the 1920s by Justin's great-grandfather. Complete with turrets, battlements, and a bridge over a crystal-clear moat, it looked like something from a Disney movie. "Justin," Davina breathed, "this is incredible. It's like a fairy tale." "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say," Justin replied, taking her hand as the helicopter touched down in the castle's courtyard. "Welcome to our private kingdom, my queen." The next 3 months became the most magical period of their lives. January through March transformed the castle from Justin's childhood refuge into their passionate love nest. Davina filled the great hall with fresh flowers from the greenhouse, opened curtains that had remained closed for years, and convinced Justin to light fires in fireplaces that had sat cold and unused. Every morning, they woke in the master tower bedroom, winter sunlight streaming through stained glass windows that painted rainbows across their skin. Justin would hold Davina close, marveling at how she made even this ancient stone fortress feel warm and alive. "Good morning, my beautiful wife," became his daily greeting, followed by soft kisses that often led to passionate lovemaking as the sun rose over their private mountain kingdom. Their days were filled with adventures that Justin had never imagined possible. They explored every room of the castle together, discovering hidden passages, secret staircases, and forgotten chambers filled with family history. In the library tower, they found first-edition books dating back centuries, and Davina convinced Justin to read with her for hours, curled together in an ancient velvet chair. "Listen to this," Davina would say, reading romantic poetry aloud while Justin traced patterns on her arm. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate." "Shakespeare had obviously never met you," Justin interrupted, earning him a playful slap and a kiss that made him forget every word of poetry ever written. The castle grounds became their playground, despite the winter weather. They rode horses through snow-covered mountain trails, Davina learning to ride side-saddle on a gentle mare named Luna, while Justin rode his black stallion, Zeus. Their laughter echoed through the valleys as Davina gained confidence, eventually racing Justin across frozen meadows with her hair flying like a banner behind her. "I feel so free here," Davina called out as they galloped side by side through a field covered in pristine snow. "You are free here," Justin called back. "This is our world, where nothing else matters but us." Evenings were spent in the great hall, where they danced to music from an ancient gramophone, the sound echoing off stone walls that had witnessed centuries of love stories. Justin taught Davina formal ballroom dancing, though they often abandoned proper technique in favor of simply swaying together while he sang softly in her ear. "I never knew you could sing," Davina murmured during one such evening, her arms wrapped around his neck as they moved slowly to imaginary music. "I never knew I wanted to until I met you," Justin replied honestly. "You bring out parts of me I didn't know existed." The castle's kitchen became their favorite gathering place. Unlike the sterile perfection of the penthouse kitchen, this one was warm and rustic, with exposed beams and a massive stone fireplace. Davina taught Justin to bake bread from scratch, their hands becoming covered in flour as they kneaded dough together. "Cooking is like making love," Davina said one snowy February afternoon as they prepared a feast for just the two of them. "It requires patience, attention, and putting your whole heart into it." Justin, who was carefully stirring a sauce under her guidance, stopped and looked at her with such intensity that Davina blushed. "Everything with you is like making love," he said softly. "Every moment, every touch, every shared glance. You've taught me that love isn't just something you feel, it's something you live." Their physical connection deepened during these castle months. In the tower bedroom, with moonlight streaming through medieval windows, they made love with a passion that seemed to shake the very foundations of the ancient stones. On Valentine's Day, Justin worshipped Davina's body like it was a sacred temple, learning every curve, every sensitive spot, every way to make her cry out his name in ecstasy. "I love you beyond reason," he whispered one night in late February, after they'd loved each other until dawn, both of them trembling with satisfaction and exhaustion. "I love you beyond time," Davina replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Beyond space, beyond everything that exists in this world." It was during that February night of passionate lovemaking, as snow fell silently outside their tower windows, that their son was conceived, though neither of them would know for another 6 weeks. They created traditions that belonged only to them. Every Sunday, they had breakfast in bed, feeding each other fresh fruit and talking about their dreams for the future. Every Wednesday, they explored a new part of the extensive grounds, discovering hidden gardens, ancient ruins, and secret clearings where they would make love under the winter sky. "I want to have children here," Davina said one afternoon in late February as they lay on a blanket beside the partially frozen moat, watching swans glide across the unfrozen sections. "I want them to grow up thinking magic is real because they lived in a castle with parents who love each other madly." Justin turned to face her, his heart so full of love it felt like it might burst. "How many children?" "As many as love creates," Davina replied with a smile that outshone the winter sun. "A whole kingdom of little princes and princesses." Justin made love to her, right there beside the water, both of them crying with joy and overwhelming love as they moved together with desperate tenderness. In that moment, creating life felt not just possible, but inevitable. They painted murals on the walls of what would become the nursery, their hands intertwined as they created a garden of dreams for the children they would have. Justin, who had never held a paintbrush for pleasure, found himself lost in the simple joy of creating something beautiful with the woman he adored. "You're getting paint in your hair," Davina laughed, reaching up to wipe a smudge of blue from his temple. "You're getting paint everywhere," Justin replied, pulling her against him and not caring that they were both covered in colorful handprints. The castle staff, initially formal and distant, fell under Davina's spell just as surely as Justin had. She learned their names, asked about their families, and treated everyone with such genuine kindness that the entire atmosphere of the estate changed. Even grumpy old Henrik, the groundskeeper who had worked for the family for 40 years, was seen smiling as Davina helped him plan the spring gardens. "She's good for you, Master Justin," Henrik observed one afternoon as he watched Justin and Davina having a picnic under the ancient oak tree. "Haven't seen you this happy since you were a boy." As March arrived and brought the first hints of spring to their mountain paradise, Justin and Davina's love only grew stronger. They carved their initials in the oak tree where they'd shared their first kiss on castle grounds, promising each other that their love would grow as strong and enduring as that mighty tree. "I could stay here forever," Davina sighed one crisp March evening as they sat by the fire in the great hall, her head on Justin's chest as he read poetry aloud. "We could," Justin agreed, his voice thoughtful. "We could live here like king and queen of our own private kingdom and never deal with the outside world again." "But we can't hide forever," Davina said gently. "Family is important, Justin. Even difficult family. They need to see how happy we are, how much we love each other. Maybe our love can help heal whatever's broken in your relationships with them." Justin's arms tightened around her, a protective instinct flaring in his chest. "Promise me something, Davina." "What?" "Promise me that no matter what happens when we go to them, no matter what they say or do, you'll remember this. Remember how perfect we are together. Remember that my love for you is the truest thing in my life." Davina turned in his arms, seeing something like fear in his eyes for the first time. "Justin, what aren't you telling me about your family? They're complicated, demanding. They have very specific ideas about the kind of woman I should have married. And I'm not that kind of woman." Justin cupped her face in his hands, his voice fierce with conviction. "You're better than anything they could have imagined for me. You're everything I never knew I needed." But they might not see that immediately. Davina kissed him softly, tasting his worry and wanting to ease it. "Then we'll show them. We'll show them what real love looks like." As March snow began to fall one last time on their mountain paradise, covering the castle grounds in pristine white, Justin made the call to his mother, announcing their visit for early April. Florence's voice was cold and formal as she arranged for their early April arrival. "I hope you know what you're doing," Florence said before hanging up, her tone carrying implications that made Justin's stomach clench with dread. That night, As snow fell silently outside their tower windows, Justin and Davina made love with desperate intensity, as if they were trying to store up enough passion and connection to survive whatever lay ahead. Neither of them realized that their passionate February lovemaking had already created the miracle that would soon change their lives forever. "I love you, Davina Gatlin," Justin whispered against her neck as she shuddered with pleasure in his arms. "I love you, Justin Gatlin," she replied, her voice breaking with emotion. "Forever and always, no matter what." But as their helicopter lifted off from the castle courtyard the next morning, carrying them toward the Hamptons and his family's estate, neither of them realized they were flying directly into a web of lies and manipulation that would test their perfect love in ways they never could have imagined. Chapter 4. The Cold Welcome. The moment their limousine pulled through the iron gates of the Hamptons estate, Davina felt the temperature drop 20 degrees, and it had nothing to do with the cold April wind. Justin squeezed her hand as they approached the imposing Georgian mansion that sprawled across perfectly manicured grounds. "Remember what I told you about them?" he murmured, his voice tense with worry he'd tried to hide during their 3-hour drive from the castle. "I remember," Davina replied softly, smoothing her carefully chosen dress, a modest but elegant navy blue that she'd hoped would make a good first impression. "I also remember that they raised the man I love, so there must be some goodness in them." The front doors opened before they could knock, revealing a stern-faced butler who barely acknowledged Davina's existence. "Master Justin, your mother is waiting in the blue salon. She requests you come alone first." "We go together," Justin said firmly, his arm protectively around Davina's waist. Florence Gatlin emerged from the shadows of the grand foyer like an ice sculpture come to life. At 58, she was still striking, with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon and diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. Her pale blue eyes swept over Davina with the same expression she might use to examine a stain on expensive fabric. "Justin, darling." Florence extended her cheek for a perfunctory kiss, her gaze never leaving Davina. "And this must be her mother. I'd like you to meet my wife, Davina." Justin's voice carried a warning edge. "Davina, this is my mother, Florence Gatlin." Davina stepped forward with genuine warmth, extending her hand. "Mrs. Gatlin, I'm so happy to finally meet you. Justin speaks of you so often." Florence looked at Davina's outstretched hand for a long, uncomfortable moment before barely touching it with her fingertips. "I'm sure he does." "Come along, Justin. We have much to discuss. Your wife can rest in the guest wing." "The guest wing?" Justin's voice sharpened. "Mother, Davina is my wife. We'll be staying in my usual room." "That room is being renovated," Florence lied smoothly. "I've had the blue guest room prepared. It has a lovely view of the servants' quarters." Before Justin could protest further, footsteps echoed across the marble floor as Shakira Gatlin descended the grand staircase like a queen making an entrance. At 28, she was tall and elegant, with the same cold beauty as her mother and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. "Justin!" Shakira glided over, embracing her brother while completely ignoring Davina. "You look wonderful. Marriage clearly agrees with you, and this must be your little barista." The word "little" dripped with condescension. Davina felt her cheeks warm but maintained her composure. "Hello, Shakira. I've heard so much about you." "I'm sure you have," Shakira replied with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Though I can't say the same. Justin's been rather secretive about his sudden wedding." "There was nothing secretive about it," Justin said, his voice growing colder. "I married the woman I love." "Of course you did, darling," Florence interjected smoothly. "Now let's get you both settled. Davina, I'm sure you're tired from your journey. Martha will show you to your room." An elderly maid appeared as if summoned by telepathy, her expression apologetic as she gestured toward a narrow hallway that clearly led to the servants' section of the house. "I'll come with you," Justin started, but Florence's hand on his arm stopped him. "Actually, Justin, there are some urgent business matters we need to discuss immediately. The Weatherford account is in crisis, and they specifically requested to speak with you today." Davina saw the conflict in Justin's eyes, his desire to stay with her versus his ingrained habit of putting business first. She rose on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek gently. "Go handle your business. I'll be fine exploring and getting settled." "Are you sure?" Justin's eyes searched her face. "I'm sure. I'll see you at dinner." As Justin was led away to his father's old study, Davina followed Martha through increasingly narrow hallways to a small, drafty room in what was clearly the servants' section of the house. The room was clean but sparse, with a single window that looked out onto the kitchen courtyard where delivery trucks unloaded supplies. "I'm sorry about this, miss," Martha whispered once they were alone. "The family's orders." They said this was the appropriate room. Davina's heart sank, but she managed to smile. "It's fine, Martha. Thank you for your kindness." That evening, Davina dressed carefully in her best dress, a simple black cocktail dress that Justin had bought for her during their castle months. When she entered the formal dining room, she found a table set for 6, though only 4 chairs were occupied. Florence sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, Shakira to her right, and 2 empty chairs obviously meant for Justin and his guest. But there was a 5th-place setting beside Shakira, and as Davina approached, a stunning blonde woman rose gracefully from that chair. "Davina, I'd like you to meet Shelley Jackson," Florence announced with obvious pleasure. "She's been such a dear family friend for years. Shelley, this is Justin's wife." Shelley Jackson was everything Davina was not: tall, perfectly groomed, dripping with expensive jewelry, and clearly born into the same world as the Gatlins. She extended a manicured hand with a smile that was both beautiful and predatory. "So you're the famous Davina," Shelley said, her voice honey-sweet with an undertone of steel. "I've heard so much about you." Though I must admit, when Florence told me Justin had married a coffee shop worker, I thought she was joking. The insult landed like a slap, but Davina maintained her grace. "It's lovely to meet you, Shelley. And yes, I did work in a coffee shop. I believe honest work is something to be proud of." "Of course it is, dear," Florence said dismissively, "though I'm sure you're relieved to be done with all that now. Justin can certainly afford to keep you comfortable." When Justin finally joined them 20 minutes later, he immediately sensed the tension. "Sorry I'm late." The call ran longer than expected. He kissed Davina's forehead and took the seat beside her, noting how her smile seemed strained. "Shelley joined us for dinner," Shakira announced brightly. "We thought it would be nice for Davina to meet some of our close friends." Throughout dinner, the conversation was carefully orchestrated to exclude Davina. They discussed people she'd never met, places she'd never been, and business dealings she couldn't follow. When she tried to contribute to a conversation about art, Shakira cut her off with, "Oh, but you probably haven't had much exposure to classical pieces, have you?" "Actually, I studied art history in college," Davina replied calmly. "Community college, I assume?" Florence asked with fake innocence. "State University," Davina corrected, refusing to be ashamed of her education. "How practical," Shelley murmured, her tone suggesting that practical was the worst thing a person could be. Justin's jaw tightened with each subtle insult, but the women were too clever to say anything he could directly confront. Every barb was delivered with a smile, every insult wrapped in false concern. After dinner, as they moved to the drawing room for coffee, Florence maneuvered to walk beside Davina while the others went ahead. "You seem like a sweet girl, Davina. Florence said in a low voice meant only for her. But you must understand this is all very overwhelming for us. Justin has never brought home anyone so different before. Different how? Davina asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Oh, darling, you know exactly how. Florence's smile was razor-sharp. This family has certain standards, certain expectations. We're not unkind people, but we do wonder how long this little infatuation will last. It's not an infatuation, Mrs. Gatlin. We love each other. Love. Florence said the word like it tasted bitter. How refreshing. Tell me, what exactly do you bring to this marriage besides your enthusiasm? Before Davina could respond, Justin appeared at her side, having noticed her absence. Is everything all right? Of course, Florence replied smoothly. I was just getting to know your lovely wife better. That night, alone in the cold guest room, Davina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The contrast between this reception and the warm paradise they'd shared at the castle was jarring. When Justin finally slipped into her room near midnight, she was sitting by the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. I'm sorry, he said immediately, sitting beside her and pulling her close. They were awful to you tonight. They don't approve of me. I don't care if they approve. I love you, and that's all that matters. Davina leaned into his warmth, drawing strength from his presence. Your mother asked me what I bring to our marriage. Justin's arms tightened around her. You bring everything. You bring love, joy, laughter, purpose. You bring meaning to my life. She thinks I'm not good enough for you. Then she's a fool, Justin said fiercely. You're not just good enough for me, Davina. You're too good for me. You make me better than I ever thought I could be. They made love that night with desperate tenderness, trying to reclaim the magic that the family's coldness had threatened to dim. In each other's arms, they found their safe haven again, their unshakable foundation of love. But as they fell asleep, holding each other close, neither of them noticed the figure standing in the garden below their window, watching with calculating eyes as Florence Gatlin began planning her next move in earnest. The next morning brought no warmth to the estate. Davina woke alone in the cramped guest room, Justin having been summoned to an early business call that Florence had mysteriously arranged. As she made her way to breakfast, she could hear voices from the dining room, laughter that stopped abruptly when she appeared in the doorway. Good morning, Davina said cheerfully, determined not to let their coldness affect her sunny disposition. Florence barely glanced up from her newspaper. There's coffee on the sideboard. Cook doesn't usually prepare individual breakfasts. Davina helped herself to coffee and toast, sitting in the chair farthest from the family's disapproving gazes. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Shakira spoke. We were just discussing the charity auction next week. All the important families will be there. I suppose you wouldn't be familiar with our social obligations, Davina. I'd love to learn, Davina replied genuinely. I've always believed in giving back to the community. Shelley, who had apparently spent the night as a houseguest, laughed softly. How sweet. Though I'm not sure serving coffee counts as charitable work. The barb stung, but Davina kept her composure. Actually, I volunteered at homeless shelters and literacy programs throughout college. I believe everyone deserves dignity and opportunity. Florence's eyes flashed with something dangerous. How noble. Though charity begins at home, don't you think? Speaking of which, I trust you'll want to contribute appropriately to the family's philanthropic efforts now that you've married into such privilege. Mother. Justin's voice cut through the tension as he entered the dining room, immediately moving to stand behind Davina's chair. I see you've started without me. We were just getting acquainted with your lovely wife, Florence replied smoothly, discussing her charitable interests. Justin's hand found Davina's shoulder, a protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the women at the table. Davina has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. You'd be lucky to learn from her example. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees, but Florence's smile never wavered. Of course, darling. We're all eager to learn from each other. What 3 devastating humiliations was Florence already planning to break Davina's spirit and drive her away from Justin forever? Chapter 5. 3 Scenes of Cruelty. 3 weeks after the photo album massacre, Davina stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands, her heart exploding with joy and terror in equal measure. Scene 1. The charity gala humiliation. The Hampton Country Club glittered with crystal chandeliers and the jewels of New York's elite as Florence's annual charity gala reached its peak. Davina had spent hours preparing, choosing a modest but beautiful emerald dress that Justin had bought for her, styling her hair with careful attention, and practicing conversations in the mirror to ensure she'd represent Justin well. "You look absolutely radiant," Justin whispered as they entered the ballroom, his hand protective on the small of her back. "I'm the luckiest man here." For the first hour, everything seemed perfect. Justin introduced Davina to business associates and old friends, his pride evident in every word. "This is my wife, Davina. She's the most wonderful woman I've ever met." But when Justin was pulled away by an urgent call from overseas investors, Florence struck like a viper. "Ladies and gentlemen," Florence's voice carried across the ballroom as she tapped her champagne glass with a silver knife. "I'd like to thank you all for supporting tonight's cause, providing educational opportunities for underprivileged children." Polite applause filled the room as Florence continued her speech, her eyes finding Davina in the crowd. "As many of you know, education is transformative. It can lift people from the most humble circumstances and teach them to navigate society's more refined spaces." Davina felt heat creep up her neck as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Florence's meaning was crystal clear to everyone present. "Speaking of education," Florence continued with a razor-sharp smile, "I'd like you all to meet someone special tonight. Many of you know my son Justin, but tonight he's brought a guest who represents exactly the kind of person our charity helps. Everyone, please welcome Justin's companion, Davina." The word companion hung in the air like a slap. Not wife, not daughter-in-law, companion, as if Davina were a paid escort or temporary amusement. For the next 30 minutes, Florence orchestrated a masterclass in social warfare. She guided Davina through the crowd, introducing her to every prominent family with the same devastating phrase, "This is Davina." She used to work in food service before she met Justin, such an inspiring story of opportunity. Each introduction was a carefully calculated humiliation. Mrs. Vanderbilt, the steel heiress, looked Davina up and down with barely concealed disgust. "How interesting. And where did you attend finishing school, dear?" "I didn't attend finishing school," Davina replied honestly. "Oh." The single word carried volumes of judgment. By the time Justin returned, his face dark with fury at his delayed call, Davina was standing alone by the champagne fountain while the elite of New York whispered and stared. She held her head high, but Justin could see the hurt in her eyes, despite her brave smile. "What did they do to you?" he demanded, pulling her close. "Nothing I can't handle," Davina lied, not wanting to cause a scene. But Justin had seen enough. He marched to his mother, his voice low and dangerous. "What game are you playing?" "Game? Darling, I simply introduced your wife to our friends. Isn't that what you wanted? You introduced her like she was a charity case." Florence's smile was ice. "If the shoe fits, Justin." Scene 2. The shopping trip from hell. 3 days later, Shakira appeared at Davina's door with a bright smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes. "Sister dear, I thought we should spend some quality time together. What do you say to a shopping trip? Just us girls getting to know each other." Davina, desperately wanting to build a relationship with Justin's family, agreed eagerly. I'd love that. Thank you for thinking of me. Wonderful. I know all the best places. An hour later, they were stepping out of a chauffeur-driven Bentley onto Fifth Avenue. Shakira led Davina into Bergdorf Goodman, the temple of luxury shopping where a single handbag cost more than most people's monthly salary. "This is one of my favorite places," Shakira announced loudly enough for nearby shoppers to hear, "though I suppose it might be a bit overwhelming for someone who's never shopped anywhere like this before." Davina felt eyes turning toward them as Shakira's voice carried across the designer floor. "It's beautiful," she said diplomatically. "Let's find you something appropriate for next week's dinner party. You'll need something that says Gatlin family rather than, well, you know." Shakira examined Davina's simple sweater and jeans with obvious distaste. For the next 2 hours, Shakira subjected Davina to exquisite torture. She selected the most expensive items in the store, holding them up against Davina while making loud observations. "This Valentino gown is divine, but probably not practical for someone on a budget," she announced to the saleswoman, who looked at Davina with newfound pity. "The Chanel suit is lovely, but might be too sophisticated," she continued, making sure other customers could hear every word. When they reached the jewelry counter, Shakira's cruelty reached new heights. "Davina needs something appropriate for formal dinners, though nothing too expensive. She's not comfortable with extravagance yet. Perhaps something from your more affordable collection." The sales associate, clearly uncomfortable, showed them pieces from the lower-priced section while other customers watched with a mixture of fascination and second-hand embarrassment. "Perfect!" Shakira exclaimed, holding up a simple silver necklace that cost $300, more than Davina had ever spent on jewelry in her life. "This screams appropriate for someone in your position." Davina's cheeks burned with humiliation, but her voice remained steady. "It's lovely. But I should probably discuss purchases with Justin first." "Oh, of course! How responsible of you. Justin does appreciate a woman who understands her limitations." When they finally returned to the estate, Davina's confidence was shattered. She'd been paraded through Manhattan's most exclusive stores, like a poor relation being fitted for hand-me-downs, with Shakira ensuring everyone knew exactly where she came from and how little she belonged. Justin found her in the garden that evening, sitting alone on a stone bench with tears she refused to let fall. "How was your shopping trip?" he asked, settling beside her. "Educational," Davina replied, managing a weak smile. "Davina, what really happened today?" She wanted to tell him everything, but the words stuck in her throat. How could she explain the 1,000 tiny cuts, the public humiliation, the way his sister had made her feel like a beggar accepting charity? "Your sister was just showing me around," she said finally. "I'm still learning how your world works." Justin sensed there was more to the story, but before he could press further, Shakira appeared on the terrace above them. "There you are. Davina, I hope you had fun today. We must do it again soon." The false sweetness in Shakira's voice made Justin's skin crawl, but Davina just nodded politely. Scene 3. The photo album massacre. The cruelest blow came exactly 1 week later during what Florence had announced as a family dinner to celebrate getting to know Davina better. Justin had been hopeful that his family was finally warming to his wife, especially since they'd seemed almost pleasant during cocktails. They were seated around the formal dining table, an antique mahogany piece that had hosted family dinners for 4 generations, when Florence made her move. "Davina, dear, I thought you might enjoy seeing some family history," Florence said sweetly, producing an elegant leather photo album. "Justin was such a handsome boy, and he's had such interesting companions over the years." Justin's blood ran cold as he recognized the album. "Mother, I don't think—" "Nonsense, darling. Wives should know about their husband's past, shouldn't they?" Florence opened the album with theatrical flourish, positioning it so everyone at the table could see. The first page showed Justin at various social events with Camilla Rothschild, the banking heiress he'd dated for 2 years. Camilla was lovely. Florence sighed wistfully. Graduated summa cum laude from Harvard, spoke 4 languages fluently, played piano beautifully, such accomplished hands. She turned the page to reveal photos of Justin with Penelope Astor at a charity polo match. And Penelope! Such breeding, such elegance. Her family founded the Metropolitan Opera, you know. She could discuss art and culture for hours. Page after page revealed a parade of sophisticated, accomplished women, all blonde, all elegant, all born into the same rarefied world as the Gatlins. With each photo, Florence provided detailed commentary on their achievements, their family connections, their suitability for someone of Justin's stature. "Mother, that's enough," Justin said tersely. But Florence was just getting started. "Oh, but here's my favorite!" She turned to a page showing Justin dancing with a stunning woman at what was clearly an engagement party. Rebecca Worthington. Such a shame about their broken engagement. She was so perfect for our family. Old money, impeccable breeding, shared values. She understood what it meant to be a Gatlin. Davina sat frozen in her chair, each photo and comment landing like a physical blow. These women were everything she wasn't: privileged, educated in elite schools, born into wealth and status. They looked like they belonged on magazine covers or in museums as examples of perfect breeding. "What happened to her?" Shelley asked with fake curiosity, though she clearly already knew the answer. "Oh," Justin broke poor Rebecca's heart when he decided he needed to find himself, Florence replied with dramatic sadness. "Such a waste. She married a French count eventually, but I always wondered what might have been." "Mother." Justin's voice was deadly quiet. "Close the album. Now." "But darling, I'm sure Davina finds this fascinating. Don't you, dear? It must be so interesting to see the caliber of women Justin usually dates." Davina's hands trembled in her lap, but her voice remained steady. "They're all very beautiful." "Beautiful and accomplished," Shakira added helpfully. "It's wonderful how love can make us overlook differences in background." The final photo was the most devastating. Justin in a tuxedo, looking every inch the sophisticated millionaire, with his arm around a woman who could have been a princess. They were at the Met Gala, surrounded by celebrities and titans of industry. "That's from just 2 years ago," Florence observed casually. "Back when Justin moved in such elevated circles, before he discovered the charm of simpler pleasures." Justin slammed his hand on the table so hard the wine glasses rattled. "That's enough. Davina, we're leaving." "Oh, darling, don't be dramatic," Florence said with mock concern. "I was simply sharing family memories. Surely your wife appreciates honesty about your past." As they stood to leave, Florence delivered her final blow. "Davina, dear, I hope you understand that Justin has always been drawn to projects. He likes to fix things, help people improve themselves. It's such a generous quality in a man." The implication was clear. Davina was just another charity case, another project for Justin to work on until he grew bored and moved on to someone more suitable. That night, Davina lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling, Florence's words echoing in her mind. Had she been naive to think their love was special? Was she really just a temporary distraction for a man who would eventually return to his own kind? When Justin slipped into her room near midnight, he found her curled in a ball, finally allowing the tears to fall. "Davina, my love, what can I do?" he whispered, gathering her into his arms. "Am I just a project to you?" she asked through her tears. "Someone you're trying to fix?" "God, no." Justin's voice broke with anguish. "You're not a project, Davina. You're my salvation. You're the love of my life, the best thing that ever happened to me." "But those women were nothing," Justin said fiercely. Empty relationships built on obligation and expectation. What we have is real, Davina. What we have is everything. As Justin held his wife while she cried, his heart burned with protective fury. His family had crossed a line tonight, and he would make sure they never hurt her like this again. But Florence Gatlin was just getting started, and her next move would make this evening's cruelty look like child's play. Chapter 6. The Miracle News. 6 weeks after their devastating early April visit to the Hamptons estate, Davina stared at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands in their Manhattan penthouse, her heart exploding with joy and terror in equal measure. The pink lines were unmistakable, bold and clear against the white plastic. She was pregnant. After everything Florence and Shakira had put her through during their family visit, after all the attempts to make her feel worthless and unwanted, life had given her the most precious gift imaginable. It was mid-May, and Davina had been feeling queasy for a week, but attributed it to the lingering stress of dealing with his family's cruelty. They'd returned to Manhattan immediately after the photo album incident, and Justin had been working overtime to distract himself from his family's treatment of his wife. "A baby," she whispered to herself, her voice filled with wonder. "Our baby." When Justin's key turned in the front door that evening, Davina was waiting in the living room, the pregnancy test hidden behind her back and her face glowing with suppressed excitement. "You look like you're about to burst with secrets," Justin observed, loosening his tie as he crossed to kiss her. "What's that beautiful smile about?" "Sit down," Davina said, barely containing her joy. "I have something incredible to tell you." Justin settled beside her on the sofa, his business concerns immediately forgotten at the sight of his wife's radiant expression. "What is it, love?" Davina took his hands in hers, her eyes bright with tears of happiness. "Justin, we're going to have a baby." For a moment, time stopped completely. Justin stared at her, his brain struggling to process the words that would change their lives forever. Then his face transformed with pure, overwhelming joy. "A baby," he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "A baby," Davina confirmed, placing the pregnancy test in his trembling hands. Justin looked at the test, then at his wife, then back at the test, as if he couldn't quite believe the miracle before him. Suddenly, he let out a whoop of joy that could have awakened the entire building, sweeping Davina into his arms and spinning her around the living room. "We're having a baby!" he shouted, tears streaming down his face. "Davina, we're going to be parents!" "I know!" Davina laughed through her own tears as Justin finally set her down, his hands immediately moving to her still flat stomach. "Our little miracle," he whispered, kneeling before her and pressing his ear to her belly as if he could already hear their child's heartbeat. "I love you already, little one. Daddy loves you so much." Davina ran her fingers through Justin's hair as he talked to their unborn baby, her heart so full of love she thought it might explode. This was the moment she'd dreamed of since childhood, sharing the miracle of new life with the man she loved beyond reason. "When did you know?" Justin asked, still kneeling with his hands protectively over her stomach. "I suspected for a few days, but I took the test this morning. I wanted to be absolutely sure before I told you." "How far along?" "The doctor will tell us for certain, but I think about 6 weeks. Remember that night at the castle in February when we made love by the fireplace during the snowstorm?" Justin's eyes darkened with love and memory. "I'll never forget that night. You were so beautiful in the firelight, and afterward you said that I felt like we'd created magic," Davina finished. "I think we did." They spent the evening planning their future with the giddy excitement of young lovers. Justin was already designing nursery layouts in his mind, talking about converting one of the penthouse's spare rooms into a perfect sanctuary for their child. "We'll need to baby-proof everything," he said, looking around their home with new eyes. And we should probably move to the castle permanently when the baby comes. Better environment for raising children, fresh air, space to run and play. Slow down, Davina laughed, though she loved his enthusiasm. We have 7 months to figure everything out. 7 months to prepare for the most important job of our lives, Justin corrected, his hands never leaving her stomach. I'm going to be the best father, Davina. I promise you that. I know you will be. You're going to love this baby so much. I already do. More than I knew was possible. The next morning, Justin surprised Davina by cancelling all his meetings to take her to the doctor for their first official prenatal appointment. As they sat in the waiting room, his hand protectively covering hers, Davina felt a contentment so complete it was almost overwhelming. Mr. and Mrs. Gatlin. The nurse called them back, and Justin helped Davina to her feet with such tender care that she almost cried again. The ultrasound confirmed what they already knew: 6 weeks pregnant, with a due date in early January. When the doctor played their baby's heartbeat through the monitor, both parents dissolved into tears of joy. "That's our baby," Justin whispered in awe, staring at the tiny flutter on the screen. "Strong heartbeat," the doctor confirmed. "Everything looks excellent. Due date is January 12th. Congratulations to you both." Walking out of the medical building, Justin couldn't stop grinning. He called his assistant from the sidewalk, his voice vibrating with excitement. "Cancel everything for the rest of the week. Cancel everything that isn't absolutely critical for the next month. My priorities just changed completely." That evening, they knew they had to share their news with Justin's family. Despite everything that had happened during their April visit, Davina still believed in the power of new life to bring families together. "Maybe this will change things," she said hopefully as Justin dialed his mother's number. "Maybe a grandchild will soften their hearts." Justin wasn't as optimistic, but he couldn't deny his wife's hope. "Mother? It's Justin. Davina and I have some wonderful news to share. We're pregnant." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Justin wondered if the call had been dropped. Finally, Florence's voice came through, cold and measured. "Pregnant? I see. How unexpected." "We're over the moon," Justin continued, trying to inject warmth into the conversation. "We wanted you to be among the first to know you're going to be a grandmother." Another pause. "Indeed. Well, congratulations, I suppose. When is this event expected to occur?" Justin's jaw tightened at his mother's clinical tone. "January 12th. And it's not an event, Mother, it's your grandchild." "Of course. Well, we'll speak soon. Goodbye, Justin." The line went dead, leaving Justin staring at his phone in disbelief. Davina watched his face fall and felt her own heart sink. "She wasn't happy," Davina observed quietly. "She wasn't anything," Justin replied bitterly. "But it doesn't matter. This is about us, about our family. Their reaction doesn't change how incredible this is." But even as Justin tried to maintain his joy, a cold dread was settling in his stomach. His family's lack of enthusiasm for their marriage was one thing, but their complete dismissal of his child was something else entirely. What dark plans were already forming in Florence's mind as she hung up the phone, and why did the news of Justin's happiness fill her with such calculated rage? Justin and Davina's fairy tale love is about to face its greatest test. Florence Gatlin has just learned that her son's unsuitable wife is carrying the next Gatlin heir, and she has no intention of letting that child legitimize a marriage she's determined to destroy. What lengths will a mother go to reclaim her son, even if it means destroying his happiness forever? Chapter 7. The Devoted Father-to-Be. From the moment Davina's pregnancy was confirmed, Justin transformed into a man possessed by love, not just for his wife, but for the tiny miracle growing inside her. The very next morning after their doctor's appointment, Davina woke to find Justin already dressed and bustling around their bedroom with the energy of a man on a mission. In his hands was a leather-bound journal and a pen, his face bright with purpose. "What are you doing?" Davina asked sleepily, stretching against the silk sheets. "Planning," Justin replied, settling beside her with the journal open. "I'm documenting everything, every day of this pregnancy, every milestone, every moment. Our child will know exactly how much they were wanted and loved from the very beginning." Davina's heart melted as she saw the first entry in Justin's neat handwriting. "Day 1 of knowing. Today we discovered we're going to be parents. I have never felt joy like this. Already I would move mountains for this child I haven't even met." "You're going to write every day?" she asked, touched beyond words. "Every single day," Justin confirmed, kissing her forehead, "and that's just the beginning of my plans." Over the following weeks, Justin's devotion reached new heights that amazed even Davina. Every morning he brought her breakfast in bed, not prepared by their housekeeper, but made by his own hands. Fresh fruit cut into perfect pieces, whole grain toast with the organic honey she craved, and herbal tea he'd researched specifically for pregnant women. "You don't have to do this every day," Davina protested, as he arranged another beautiful breakfast tray. "I want to," Justin replied firmly. "You're carrying our child. The least I can do is make sure you're perfectly nourished and cared for." He read pregnancy books with the intensity he'd once reserved for business contracts, highlighting passages and making notes in the margins. Their coffee table became covered with guides to prenatal nutrition, child development, and parenting philosophies. "Did you know that at 8 weeks, our baby is already the size of a raspberry?" Justin announced one evening, looking up from his latest reading material. "I did know that," Davina laughed, settling beside him on the sofa. "Because you told me yesterday when they were the size of a blueberry." "This is fascinating," Justin continued, completely absorbed. "At 12 weeks they'll be able to hear sounds." "I want to start reading to them immediately," and he did. Every night, Justin would position himself beside Davina's growing belly, reading everything from classic literature to children's stories in a soft, loving voice. "Good evening, little miracle," he would begin each session. "This is your daddy, and I love you more than all the stars in the sky." When Davina experienced morning sickness, Justin was there with ginger tea and cool washcloths, holding her hair back and rubbing her shoulders with infinite patience. "I'm sorry you feel awful," he'd whisper, "but I'm grateful every day for what your body is doing for our family." "You don't mind that I'm throwing up constantly and can't keep food down?" Davina asked weakly after a particularly bad morning. "Mind? Davina, you're creating life. You're growing our child inside you. You've never been more beautiful to me." By her second month of pregnancy, Justin had transformed one of their spare rooms into a temporary nursery planning space. The walls were covered with paint samples, furniture catalogues, and sketches of possible room layouts. He spent hours researching cribs, researching child safety, and planning every detail of their baby's environment. "I want everything to be perfect," he explained to Davina as she found him surrounded by baby gear catalogues at midnight. "The safest car seat, the most comfortable crib, the best everything." "The baby won't care about expensive things," Davina said gently, running her fingers through his hair. "They'll just care about being loved." "Then they'll be the most loved child in history," Justin replied, pulling her onto his lap and placing both their hands on her slightly rounded belly. When Davina couldn't sleep due to pregnancy discomfort, Justin would massage her feet, her back, her shoulders, whatever ached, while telling her stories about their future family adventures. "We'll teach them to ride horses at the castle," he'd murmur, as his hands worked magic on her tense muscles. "And to appreciate good books, and to be kind to everyone they meet, just like their mother." "What if they're more like you?" Davina asked, brilliant with business and numbers. Then we'll teach them that success means nothing without love and family, Justin replied. They'll never question whether they're loved or valued. They'll never spend 32 years of their life feeling empty inside. Justin's protective instincts reached almost comical levels. He researched every food Davina ate, ensuring nothing could harm their developing baby. He installed additional security systems in their penthouse. He even hired a prenatal yoga instructor to come to their home 3 times a week because he didn't want Davina traveling to a studio. "I think you're going a little overboard," Davina laughed as Justin interviewed their third potential pediatrician. "There's no such thing as overboard when it comes to our child," Justin replied seriously. "I want them to have everything I didn't have: stability, constant love, parents who put family before everything else." At 5 months pregnant in September, during their third ultrasound appointment, they heard their baby's heartbeat again and learned they were having a boy. Justin gripped Davina's hand so tightly she thought he might break her fingers, both of them crying as the strong, steady rhythm filled the examination room. "That's our baby's heart," Justin said in wonder, his voice thick with emotion. "Strong and healthy," the doctor confirmed with a smile. "Everything looks perfect." As they drove home from the appointment, Justin was quiet, his hand resting protectively on Davina's thigh. "What are you thinking about?" Davina asked. "I'm thinking about how this changes everything," Justin replied. "How I'd die before I let anything happen to you or our baby. How I'd destroy anyone who tried to hurt our family." "Nothing's going to happen to us," Davina said confidently. "We're going to be happy, Justin. We're going to raise our child with so much love, they'll never doubt their worth." "Promise me something," Justin said, pulling into their building's garage. "Anything. Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve this happiness. Promise me you'll remember how much I love you and our baby, no matter what anyone says or does." Davina was puzzled by the intensity in his voice. "Justin, what's wrong? Why are you talking like something bad is going to happen?" "Nothing's wrong," Justin said quickly. "I just love you both so much that the thought of anything threatening our happiness terrifies me." That night, as they lay in bed with Justin's hand splayed protectively over Davina's growing belly, she felt their baby move for the first time, just a tiny flutter like butterfly wings. "Justin!" she gasped, grabbing his hand and pressing it more firmly against her stomach. "Did you feel that?" They lay perfectly still, waiting, and then it happened again, a gentle movement that made both parents cry with joy. "Hello, little one," Justin whispered to Davina's belly. "This is your daddy. I felt you move, and it's the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me." As spring arrived and Davina's belly grew rounder, Justin's devotion only intensified. He talked to their baby constantly, sharing his hopes and dreams for their future. He bought prenatal music players and classical CDs, convinced that Mozart would make their child smarter. "You're going to spoil this baby before they're even born," Davina teased, as Justin set up yet another piece of baby equipment. "Impossible," Justin replied, kissing her belly. "There's no such thing as too much love." But beneath their perfect happiness, trouble was brewing. Florence had been unusually quiet since learning of the pregnancy, and her silence worried Justin more than her previous hostility. He'd tried calling several times, but she was always unavailable, according to the household staff. "Maybe we should visit them again," Davina suggested one evening as they felt their baby kicking. "Share our joy in person, let them see how happy we are." Justin's protective instincts flared. "I don't want you stressed during pregnancy. My family can be intense." "But this is their grandchild," Davina insisted. "Surely that changes everything." Justin looked at his wife's hopeful face and felt his heart break a little. Her faith in the power of love and family was one of the things he adored most about her, but he feared his family would see it as weakness to exploit. "If you really want to see them, we'll go," he said finally. "But at the first sign of any stress or upset, we're leaving immediately." "Deal," Davina agreed, snuggling closer to him. "I love you for protecting us, but I also believe love can heal anything." As they planned their visit for the following month, when Davina would be safely into her second trimester, neither of them could have imagined that Florence Gatlin was already putting into motion the most devastating betrayal of their lives. What evil plan was Florence crafting in the shadows? And how would she use Davina's own loving heart to destroy the happiness that had bloomed so beautifully? Chapter 8. The Day of Betrayal. January 12th began like any other day of Davina's pregnancy, with Justin's gentle kiss on her forehead and his whispered "good morning" to their unborn child. But it would end with a betrayal so devastating it would shatter 3 lives forever. Davina woke at 5 a.m. with the sharp, unmistakable pain of contractions rippling across her swollen belly. At exactly 40 weeks pregnant, right on her due date, she'd been expecting labor to start any day, but the reality still took her breath away. "Justin," she whispered, shaking her husband's shoulder gently. "Justin, it's time." Justin's eyes flew open instantly, his businessman's reflexes kicking in as he saw the mixture of excitement and pain on his wife's face. "The baby? Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Davina breathed through another contraction. "Our little miracle is ready to meet us." Within minutes, Justin was in full protective mode, timing contractions with military precision while gathering their carefully packed hospital bag. 4 minutes apart, lasting 45 seconds each, he announced, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "We should head to the hospital soon." "Let me call my sister first," Davina said, reaching for her phone. "I want Monica to know." As Davina spoke to her sister Monica in excited whispers, Justin called his mother to share the momentous news. Florence's voice was strangely breathless when she answered. "Justin? What's wrong? It's so early." "Nothing's wrong, Mother. Everything's perfect. Davina's in labor. You're about to become a grandmother." There was a pause that lasted too long, then Florence's voice returned with an odd tremor. "Labor? But I thought, oh my goodness, of course, how exciting." "We're heading to Mount Sinai Hospital within the hour," Justin said, his excitement making him miss the strange tone in his mother's voice. "Wait!" Florence's voice suddenly became urgent. "Justin, I need to see you before you go. It's about the Weatherford contract. There's been a major development that requires your immediate attention. Mother, my wife is in labor. Whatever it is can wait." "No, it can't." Florence's voice cracked with unusual emotion. "Justin, please. This could destroy everything we've built. Just come quickly and then you can go to the hospital." Justin looked at Davina, who was breathing through another contraction with focused determination. "I can't leave Davina right now." "Bring her with you then. It will only take 20 minutes and the fresh air might help with her pain." Against his better judgment, Justin agreed. Davina, trusting her husband's family despite everything they'd put her through, nodded her consent. "If it's important to you, we can stop by quickly." The drive to the Hamptons estate felt eternal as Davina's contractions intensified. Justin held her hand, his own palm sweating with anxiety as he watched his wife struggle with increasing pain. "We shouldn't have come," he muttered as they pulled through the familiar gates. "We should have gone straight to the hospital." "It's okay," Davina panted. 20 minutes, then we meet our baby." But the moment they entered the estate, Florence collapsed. Not gradually, not with warning, but a dramatic fall that sent her crashing to the marble floor of the foyer with a sickening thud. She lay there gasping, clutching her chest, her face pale and her breathing labored. "Mother!" Justin dropped to his knees beside her, his medical training from business school first aid courses kicking in. "Call 911, now!" "No hospitals," Florence gasped weakly. "Just Chest pains. Stress about the business. I'll be fine if I can just rest. Shakira appeared as if summoned by magic, her face a mask of concern. She's been like this all morning ever since you called. The stress about the Weatherford situation combined with worry about becoming a grandmother, it's been too much for her heart. Davina, despite her own pain, knelt beside Florence with genuine concern. Mrs. Gatlin, you need medical attention. Please let us call an ambulance. No, Florence whispered, grasping Justin's hand with surprising strength. I just need my son here. Please, Justin, don't leave me. Justin looked between his laboring wife and his apparently dying mother, torn apart by impossible choices. Davina, what do you think? Go with your mother, Davina said through gritted teeth as another contraction hit. Monica is on her way. She can take me to the hospital. I can't leave you in labor. You can't let your mother suffer alone either, Davina replied, her enormous heart showing even in her moment of greatest need. Family takes care of family. As Monica arrived to help Davina to the car, Florence squeezed Justin's hand tighter. Stay with me, son. Please. I'm so frightened. It was the first time Justin had ever heard vulnerability in his mother's voice, and it shattered his resolve. I'll meet you at the hospital as soon as I can, he promised Davina, kissing her deeply. I love you. Tell our baby daddy loves them. I love you too, Davina whispered back. Take care of your mother. The moment Davina's car disappeared down the driveway, Florence's heart attack miraculously resolved itself. She sat up on the sofa where Justin had carefully placed her, her color returning and her breathing normal. Mother, you're feeling better, Justin asked, relief flooding his voice. Much better, darling. Shakira, bring me those files from the safe. What files? Justin asked, confused by the sudden change in his mother's demeanor. Shakira returned with a manila envelope, her face grim with fake sorrow. Justin, there's something you need to know about Davina. Something we discovered weeks ago but didn't know how to tell you. What are you talking about? Justin's voice carried a warning edge. We hired a private investigator, Florence said, her voice heavy with false regret. Not to spy, but to protect you. We needed to know more about the woman you married so suddenly. You had no right. We had every right, Shakira interrupted, and we're glad we did. Justin, Davina has been lying to you. With trembling hands that betrayed her excitement rather than sorrow, Florence opened the envelope and spread photographs across the coffee table. The images showed Davina in intimate conversation with a handsome man at various locations around the city, restaurants, parks, even what appeared to be a hotel lobby. This is Ricardo Mendez, Florence said, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. He's been meeting with your wife for months, even during her pregnancy. Justin stared at the photos, his world tilting off its axis. This can't be real. Davina would never. There's more, Shakira said softly, producing a second set of documents. DNA results. Preliminary testing shows that the baby Davina is carrying. It's not yours, Justin. The papers looked official, complete with medical letterhead and scientific terminology that Justin's shocked mind couldn't process. But the conclusion was clear. Probability of paternity, 0%. No, Justin whispered, his voice breaking. This is impossible. Davina loves me. She would never. We didn't want to believe it either, Florence said, moving to sit beside her devastated son. But the evidence is overwhelming. She's been using you, Justin, your money, your name, your protection. Justin's phone buzzed with a text from Monica. Labor progressing quickly. Where are you? Looking at his phone, at the photos scattered before him, at his family's concerned faces, Justin felt something die inside his chest. The woman he'd trusted with his entire heart, the woman carrying what he'd believed was his child, had been living a lie. With hands shaking with rage and heartbreak, Justin typed the message that would destroy everything. Me or the baby? Choose. The response came back within minutes. Davina's words sent between contractions. I choose our baby. Always our baby. To Justin's devastated mind, poisoned by his family's lies, this wasn't the response of a loving wife choosing their child's life during a difficult labor. This was confirmation of his worst fears, that she'd never truly loved him, that the baby wasn't his, that everything beautiful in his life had been an elaborate deception. She chose, he said numbly, showing the text to Florence and Shakira. Oh, darling, Florence said, her voice full of false sympathy. I'm so sorry. But at least now you know the truth. Justin stood abruptly, his face a mask of cold fury. I need air. I need to think. Of course, son. Take all the time you need. Shakira and I will handle everything. As Justin walked out into the January night, his heart shattered beyond repair, Florence and Shakira exchanged triumphant glances. Their plan had worked perfectly. They'd isolated Justin during his wife's most vulnerable moment, fed him lies disguised as evidence, and manipulated his love into devastating betrayal. Meanwhile, 50 miles away at Mount Sinai Hospital, Davina gave birth to James Justin Gatlin completely alone, except for Monica's loving support. As the doctor placed her son in her arms at 11:47 p.m., a perfect baby boy with Justin's dark hair and strong jaw, Davina wept with joy and heartbreak. He's beautiful, Monica whispered, tears in her eyes. He looks exactly like Justin. Where is Justin? Davina asked through her exhaustion. Why hasn't he come? Monica showed her the devastating text message again, and Davina's heart broke anew. Her husband, the man who'd promised to love her forever, had abandoned her and their child during the most important moment of their lives. I don't understand, Davina whispered, holding baby James close to her chest. I thought he loved us. But as Florence's web of lies tightened around Justin's broken heart, the real tragedy was just beginning, because sometimes the cruelest betrayals come from those who claim to love us most. Chapter 9. The Broken Man's Choice. 6 months after destroying his marriage with a single text message in October, Justin Gatlin sat in his penthouse in April, like a ghost haunting his own life, surrounded by everything that had once brought him joy and now only reminded him of his devastating loss. The man who had once filled his home with laughter and love was gone, replaced by a hollow shell who worked 18-hour days to avoid thinking and drank expensive whiskey to avoid feeling. Every surface that had once held Davina's photographs now stood empty. Every room that had echoed with her humming was now silent as a tomb. Thomas, the loyal servant who had worked for the Gatlin family for 23 years, watched his young master's decline with growing alarm. Justin barely ate, never smiled, and spoke only when business demanded it. The vibrant, passionate man who had fallen in love with a coffee shop barista had disappeared, leaving behind someone Thomas barely recognized. Master Justin, Thomas said carefully one grey November morning, as he found Justin staring out the penthouse windows at Central Park, a glass of whiskey in his hand, despite the early hour. Perhaps you should consider taking a vacation. Some time away might help. Help with what? Justin's voice was flat, emotionless. Help me forget that the woman I loved more than life itself was using me. Help me forget that I was stupid enough to believe in fairy tales. Thomas had served the Gatlin family long enough to recognize the signs of Florence's manipulation, but he'd never seen her work so thoroughly or devastatingly. Sir, if I may say, you may not. Justin cut him off coldly. Just bring my coffee and leave me alone. It was during this dark period that Florence began her campaign to reshape Justin's future according to her own design. She visited the penthouse regularly, ostensibly to check on her son's well-being, but actually to systematically introduce Shelley Jackson into his broken life. "Justin, darling, you can't mourn forever," Florence said during one such visit, settling into the chair where Davina used to read to him. "Life must go on, and the family business needs your full attention." "I'm working," Justin replied mechanically. "The quarterly reports show—" "I'm not talking about business, son. I'm talking about your personal life, about moving forward and finding happiness again." Justin's laugh was bitter. "Happiness. I had happiness, Mother. I had everything, and I threw it away." "You didn't throw anything away," Florence said firmly. "You discovered the truth and made the right choice." "Painful, yes, but necessary. The right choice." Justin turned to face his mother, his eyes hollow. "The right choice would have been to believe in my wife instead of listening to lies." Florence's expression sharpened dangerously. "Those weren't lies, Justin. The evidence was clear. The DNA test—" "Could have been fabricated," Justin finished, the words he'd been afraid to think finally escaping. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would we fabricate evidence against someone we wanted to accept into the family?" The question hung in the air, and Justin couldn't find an answer that made sense. His grief was too overwhelming, his guilt too crushing, to think clearly about his family's motivations. 2 weeks later, Florence orchestrated Shelley's first coincidental encounter with Justin. She arranged for them to meet at a business dinner, knowing Justin couldn't refuse without appearing unprofessional. Shelley Jackson was undeniably stunning. Tall, blonde, perfectly groomed, and sophisticated in ways that reminded Justin painfully of the women he'd dated before Davina. She spoke knowledgeably about market trends, shared connections with his business associates, and moved through the elite social gathering like she'd been born to it. "Justin Gatlin," she said, extending a manicured hand when Florence introduced them. "I've heard so much about you. I'm sorry about your recent difficulties." "Thank you," Justin replied automatically, his social training overriding his emotional numbness. "Perhaps we could have lunch sometime. I'm working on a charity initiative that could benefit from your expertise." Justin found himself agreeing, though he felt nothing, no attraction, no interest, no spark of any kind. Shelley was everything his family had always wanted for him, and everything that left him completely cold. Their first lunch led to a second, then a third. Shelley was pleasant company, intelligent, well-mannered, appropriate in every way. She never demanded emotional investment, never pushed for intimacy, never challenged him to be more than he was. After the intensity of his relationship with Davina, Shelley's emotional distance was almost a relief. "She's perfect for you," Florence observed during one of her visits, watching through the penthouse windows as Justin and Shelley walked through Central Park together. "Stable, suitable, from good family. Everything a Gatlin wife should be." "I'm not looking for a wife," Justin replied flatly. "Perhaps not now, but time heals all wounds." "Shelley is patient. She understands what you're going through." What Justin didn't know was that Shelley understood nothing except the size of his bank account and the prestige of his name. She'd been carefully selected and coached by Florence, prepared to be the perfect replacement for the inconvenient love that had temporarily derailed Justin's proper life trajectory. Meanwhile, Thomas had begun to notice disturbing inconsistencies in the story he'd been told about Davina's betrayal. Working in the background of the Gatlin household, he'd overheard whispered conversations between Florence and Shakira that made his blood run cold. Late one evening, while cleaning Justin's study, Thomas discovered a receipt that had fallen behind the desk, payment to a photo editing service for advanced image manipulation. The date was just 2 days before Davina went into labor. "Photo manipulation," Thomas murmured to himself, his heart sinking as pieces of a horrible puzzle began falling into place. Over the following weeks, Thomas carefully gathered evidence while maintaining his dutiful servant facade. He found records of payments to a man matching the description of Ricardo Mendez, not for an affair, but for graphic design work on fake medical documents. He discovered email correspondence between Florence and a private investigator discussing creating convincing evidence. The truth hit Thomas like a physical blow. His master's family had orchestrated the complete destruction of Justin's marriage through elaborate deception. They'd manipulated photos, falsified DNA results, and timed their revelation to coincide with Davina's labor for maximum emotional devastation. But Thomas was a careful man who'd survived decades in service by choosing his moments wisely. He needed more evidence before he could approach Justin with accusations against his own family. Christmas arrived like a funeral. Justin went through the motions of holiday celebrations with Shelley and his family, but Thomas could see the emptiness in his master's eyes. During Christmas dinner, as Shelley laughed at Shakira's jokes and complimented Florence's decorating, Thomas watched Justin stare at his untouched plate and knew that his master was thinking about another Christmas, one that should have been spent with Davina and their baby. "A toast," Florence announced, raising her champagne glass. "To new beginnings and moving forward from past mistakes. To the future," Shelley added sweetly, her hand finding Justin's on the table. Justin raised his glass mechanically, but Thomas saw no hope in his eyes, only resignation to a life without the love that had once made him truly alive. That night, as Thomas cleaned up after the dismal celebration, he made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't watch his master destroy himself over lies any longer. The time had come to reveal the truth, no matter what consequences it might bring. "Master Justin," Thomas said quietly, as Justin sat alone in his study, staring at a family photo that no longer included the faces that mattered most to him. "What is it, Thomas?" "There's something you need to know about your wife, sir. About what really happened the day your son was born." Justin's head snapped up, his eyes suddenly sharp with dangerous attention. "What did you say?" "Your wife, sir, Mrs. Davina, she never betrayed you." But would Justin believe the truth after 6 months of living with lies? And could Thomas prove the deception before it was too late to save the love that Florence had so cruelly destroyed? Chapter 10. The Truth Revealed. The moment Thomas spoke those 7 words, "She never betrayed you," Justin's carefully constructed world of pain and lies began to crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane, and for the first time in 6 months, his dead heart stirred with something that felt dangerously close to hope. "What did you just say?" Justin's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of 6 months of agony and self-destruction. He sat slumped in his leather chair, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the desk beside him, looking like a man who had forgotten what sleep felt like. Thomas stepped closer, his weathered hands shaking as he pulled a thick manila folder from beneath his jacket. In 23 years of serving the Gatlin family, he had never felt his heart pound with such nervous determination. "Master Justin, I've been watching, listening, gathering evidence for months. Your family lied to you. Everything they showed you about Mrs. Davina was fabricated." "Get out," Justin said automatically, his defense mechanisms kicking in even as his pulse quickened. "Get out before I fire you and have you arrested for slander." "I've served your family for 23 years, Thomas replied steadily, his voice gaining strength with each word. "I've kept their secrets, cleaned up their messes, stayed silent about manipulation and cruelty that would shock even you, but I cannot watch them destroy an innocent woman and her child. I cannot watch you destroy yourself over lies anymore." Justin's hands trembled as he stared at the folder, torn between hope and terror. 6 months of believing his wife had betrayed him. 6 months of living with the agony of thinking the child he'd longed for wasn't his. What if it was all false? But what if Thomas was lying? What if this was another layer of deception designed to torture him further? "If you're lying to me," Justin's voice cracked with emotion. "If this is some sick game, I'm not lying, sir. Look at the evidence yourself. See what they did to you, to Mrs. Davina, to your son." Thomas opened the folder with reverent care, revealing the fruits of months of careful, dangerous investigation. The first document was a receipt from Advanced Photo Imaging, dated January 10th, 2 days before Davina's labor. Payment for extensive digital manipulation of multiple candid photographs. Justin's breath caught in his throat as he read the itemized services. Subject insertion into existing images, facial feature enhancement for believability, background adjustment, shadow correction. His hands began to shake violently. "This is proof that the photos of Mrs. Davina with that man were completely fabricated," Thomas finished gently. "But there's much more, sir." The next document made Justin's blood freeze. Bank records showed payments totaling $50,000 to Ricardo Mendez, not for an affair, but for graphic design consultation and document creation services. Phone records proved he'd never met Davina, never even spoken to her. He was a freelance graphic designer who'd been paid to create false medical documents. The DNA test was completely fabricated, Thomas explained, his voice heavy with the weight of truth. "Your son's real DNA was never tested. They created an entirely fake medical report using a template purchased online." Justin sank deeper into his chair, his face white with shock as the magnitude of his family's deception became clear. "Why?" he whispered, the word barely audible. "Why would they do this to me?" "To us. Because Mrs. Davina made you happy in a way that terrified them," Thomas said simply. "Because she loved you for yourself, not your money or status, because she would have protected you from their manipulation for the rest of your life." With shaking hands, Justin examined each piece of evidence as Thomas laid it out like a prosecutor presenting a case. Recorded conversations between Florence and Shakira discussing their perfect plan, obtained when Thomas had hidden recording devices in the study, screenshots of emails between Florence and the private investigator detailing exactly how to create convincing evidence of adultery, receipts for fake phone numbers, payments to actors hired to pose as medical professionals, even receipts for Florence's acting coach who had helped her perfect the fake heart attack. "Listen to this," Thomas said, pressing play on a small recording device. Florence's voice filled the study, clear and unmistakable. "The timing has to be perfect, Shakira. We show him the evidence while she's in labor, when he's most emotional and vulnerable. He'll never think clearly enough to question the proof." Shakira's laughter was like ice. "And if he doesn't believe it, he'll believe it." Florence's voice was cold with certainty. "Men always believe the worst when their pride is threatened, and Justin's always been too trusting for his own good." Justin's face went through a dozen emotions as he listened to his own family laughing about destroying his marriage. Shock gave way to understanding, understanding to rage, and rage to a grief so profound it threatened to tear him apart. "The heart attack?" Justin asked, though he already knew the answer. "Completely staged," Thomas confirmed. "Mrs. Florence took acting classes in college, and she's been practicing that performance for weeks. She needed you away from the hospital during the birth, so Mrs. Davina would be alone and vulnerable when she received your text." "My son," Justin whispered, his voice breaking completely. "My son was born while I was here believing lies about his mother." Thomas pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. "A beautiful baby boy, sir. Born healthy at 7 pounds, 3 ounces at 11:47 p.m. on January 12th. He has your eyes, your stubborn chin, and your mother's dimples." The photo on Thomas's screen showed a perfect infant with unmistakably Gatlin features, dark hair, strong jaw, and eyes that were definitely Justin's. But what destroyed Justin completely was the next photo. Davina in her hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, holding their son with tears streaming down her face while she stared at her phone, undoubtedly reading Justin's cruel text message. "She was alone," Justin said, his voice hollow with horror. "She gave birth to our child completely alone while I was here, drowning in self-pity over lies." "Not completely alone, sir. Her sister Monica was with her, but she kept asking for you, right up until the moment Master James was born. Even after your text message, she kept saying, 'Daddy will come. Daddy loves us.'" Justin buried his face in his hands as the full weight of his betrayal crashed over him like a tidal wave. While his wife had been giving birth to their child, scared, heartbroken, abandoned, he'd been wallowing in manufactured grief over lies his own family had fed him like poison. "Where is she now?" he asked through his tears, his voice muffled by his hands. "Where are they?" "Jamaica, sir. Mrs. Davina moved there 4 months ago when Master James was 2 months old. She's teaching at Kingston Elementary School, raising your son as a single mother." "Jamaica," Justin repeated, his heart shattering anew at the thought of his wife fleeing to another country to escape the pain he'd caused. "She took our son and left the country because of what I did to her. Sir, if I may—" Thomas hesitated, then forged ahead. "I've kept in contact with Mrs. Davina's sister, Monica. She sends me pictures sometimes, updates about Master James. Your son is beautiful, healthy and happy. Mrs. Davina has built a good life for them both, despite everything." Thomas scrolled through his phone, showing Justin recent photographs that Monica had sent. The images showed a toddler with dark curls and familiar eyes, laughing as he played on a beach, with waves lapping at his tiny feet. Beside him sat Davina, older and more serious than Justin remembered, but still radiating the warmth that had first captured his heart. She wore a simple sundress and was building sandcastles with their son, her face peaceful despite the sadness that lingered in her eyes. "James," Justin breathed, touching the screen with reverent fingers, tracing his son's face. "His name is James. James Justin Gatlin," Thomas confirmed, his voice gentle. "She gave him your full name, sir. Even after everything, even after your text message, she gave him your name." Justin stared at the photo of his son, and felt something reawaken in his chest that had been dead for months. Love, regret, desperate hope, and overwhelming shame warred in his heart as he realized what he'd lost through his family's manipulation and his own devastating failure to trust. "Look at him," Justin whispered, tears streaming down his face as he studied every detail of his child's features. "He has my nose. And Davina's smile. God, Thomas, what have I done?" "You were deceived by people who should have protected your happiness," Thomas said firmly. "This isn't your fault, sir. This is theirs." "No," Justin said, standing abruptly with more purpose than he'd shown in months. "I chose to believe the worst about my wife instead of trusting the love we shared. I chose to send that text message. I chose to abandon them when they needed me most." "What will you do now, sir?" Justin was already moving toward his bedroom, his mind clearing for the first time in half a year. "I have to go to them. I have to tell Davina the truth, show her this evidence, apologize for destroying our family with my weakness." "Sir," Thomas said carefully, following him, "Mrs. Davina has built a new life. She may not welcome your return. The pain you caused, it changed her." "I don't care if she never forgives me," Justin replied, his voice stronger than it had been in months as he pulled out his suitcase and began throwing clothes into it with frantic energy. "I need her to know that I never stopped loving her, that if I'd known the truth, nothing in this world could have kept me from her side when our son was born." "What about Miss Shelley?" Thomas asked quietly. Justin stopped packing and looked confused for a moment, as if he'd completely forgotten Shelley existed. Shelley? There was never anything real with Shelley. She was just a placeholder, a way to avoid dealing with what I'd lost. A way to pretend I could love someone else when my heart belonged completely to Davina. And your mother? Your sister? Justin's face hardened with an anger Thomas had never seen before, cold and deadly and absolutely furious. My mother and sister destroyed my family with elaborate lies. They cost me the only woman I've ever truly loved and 6 months with my son. They made me into a man who abandons his wife during childbirth. I'll deal with them when I get back. If you get back, sir. What do you mean? Thomas's expression was grave, weighted with knowledge of just how deeply Justin's betrayal had wounded Davina. Mrs. Davina loved you more than her own life, sir. But love betrayed can turn to something else entirely. She may not want to see you. She may not trust you ever again. And she may not want Master James to know a father who abandoned him at birth. Justin absorbed this possibility like a physical blow, but his resolve didn't waver. His hands continued packing with desperate efficiency. Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of a second chance. I'll camp outside her door, write letters every day, do whatever it takes to show her that my love was real, even if my trust was shattered by lies. Sir, she may have moved on. She may have found someone else who won't abandon her. The thought hit Justin like a knife to the chest, but he forced himself to consider it. Then I'll be happy for her happiness, even if it destroys me. But she needs to know the truth, Thomas. She needs to know that I didn't choose to believe she was unfaithful. I was manipulated into it by the people I trusted most. Within 2 hours, Justin was in his private jet, flying through the night toward Jamaica with nothing but Thomas's evidence folder and a heart full of desperate hope. But as the plane lifted off from New York, the full weight of what he was about to face began to settle over him like a crushing burden. He pulled out his phone and stared at the photos Thomas had shown him of his son. James Justin Gatlin, 6 months old, with his father's eyes and his mother's radiant smile. 6 months of life that Justin had missed because he'd chosen to believe lies over love. What kind of man abandons his wife during childbirth? He asked himself aloud in the empty cabin, his voice echoing off the leather seats. What kind of father misses his child's first 6 months because he was too weak to trust? The flight to Jamaica would take 4 hours. 4 hours for Justin to plan what he would say to the woman whose heart he'd shattered with a single text message. How do you apologize for believing your family over your wife? How do you explain 6 months of silence to a woman who'd given birth alone? He opened Thomas's folder again, studying every piece of evidence that proved his family's elaborate deception. The recorded conversations were the most damaging. Hearing his mother and sister laugh about manipulating him into destroying his own happiness filled him with a rage so pure it threatened to consume him. But beneath the rage was something even more powerful: love. Love for Davina that had never died despite 6 months of trying to bury it. Love for the son he'd never met but already adored beyond reason. Love that was strong enough to cross oceans and beg forgiveness for the unforgivable. As the plane flew through the dark Caribbean night, Justin made plans that went far beyond a simple reunion. He would stay in Jamaica as long as it took. He would prove to Davina that his love was real, that his betrayal had been manipulation, not choice. He would earn the right to be James's father, even if it took years. "I'm coming home," he whispered to the photos of his family. "Daddy's finally coming home." But Thomas's warning echoed in his mind. Some wounds cut so deep that even the truth might not be enough to heal them. What if Davina had learned to live without him? What if she'd found someone else to love? What if she refused to let him near their son? The plane began its descent toward Kingston as dawn broke over the Caribbean, painting the sky in shades of hope and redemption. Justin clutched the evidence folder and prepared to fight for his family's forgiveness. Back in New York, Florence discovered her son's disappearance and flew into a rage that terrified even Shakira. "Find them!" she screamed into her phone. Find them and stop this reunion before it destroys everything we've worked for." But it was too late. Justin Gatlin was already on Jamaican soil, breathing the same air as his wife and child for the first time in 6 months, and nothing his family could do would stop him from fighting for the love he'd so foolishly thrown away. As Justin's taxi wound through the colourful streets of Kingston toward the address Thomas had given him, his hands shook with anticipation and terror, because in a few short hours he would come face to face with the woman he'd betrayed and the son he'd abandoned, and discover whether love could truly conquer the deepest wounds of the heart.